Silas Carson, thank you for talking to me. How are you?
This is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them.
In this episode, I talked to Silas Carson, who played 4 roles in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, most notably Ki-Adi-Mundi and Nute Gunray. Silas started by telling me how he hadn't actually seen the original trilogy. I know, right? I almost terminated the interview. So when his agents called about the potential roles, it's fair to say that he may as well have been talking Wookiee.
I said to him, Star Wars, but they've already done that. That's how ignorant I was. He was just like, oh, God, Silas. They're doing prequels. And I went, oh, I see. Oh, of course. Yes.
Had you seen the originals?
No, I grew up in a very quiet seaside town. I went to school there, a place called Eastbourne on the south coast near Brighton. And I was at a public school, so I was very distracted by hard work. There was one cinema in the town. I never went to the cinema as a kid. So I kind of knew of these films, but they were there in the background. I watched all 3 when they released the silver edition, just before I started filming.
Research.
Yeah, research.
So you're in the room for presumably one role initially. What was that role and how did it end up becoming, 4 roles? 3 or 4 roles in the end?
I never ended up doing the role that I was in for because It didn't exist. After a while, it didn't exist. I mean, it was a pilot. And it got written out of the script. The scenes got written out of the script. But then there was this other little role as a pilot that you can see me in as Lieutenant Williams, me and Brona Gallagher. In the meantime, I had gone onto the set and met George. He wanted a few actors to do a little kind of R&D workshop on just basically setting camera angles and so on and so forth. So I was asked if I would do that. I was there for a couple of days doing that. And that's when I kind of got to know George. This was at Leavesden Studios. I went back for some fittings and Robin Gerland met me. And by this time, we'd met a few times. And we were kind of walking and talking. She was showing me around the studio. They were just lovely. They wanted people to see and they wanted people to get enthused. The Creature Workshop was extraordinary, Jamie. I mean, it's just, these guys are real artists and there were models everywhere. And there was this beautiful sculpture of a head that would become Ki-Adi-Mundi. And I said to her, wow, who is this? And who is this going to be? She said, well, this is an idea we have for one of the Jedi Masters. And then she looked at me and she said, have you ever done any prosthetic work? And I said, no, I'd love to do that. And she said, really? That's not the response we usually get from actors. People don't want to be inside that kind of stuff. And it can be very claustrophobic. And I was like, look, I'm always open to working in new ways. So she said, well, why don't you come in and have a prosthetics test? And then, we can have a look at you being inside one of these people. It ended up being Ki-Adi-Mundi. And as the conversation kind of developed, I was like, I knew that if I was on set with Ki-Adi, then it would be my voice. The mouth was free. It wouldn't be a question of it being, you wouldn't be able to hear it and somebody had to dub it over.
Sure. Yeah, because Star Wars does have a history of dubbing over the actors in the suits, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew that there was a chance that it would be my voice, but I pressed her for it. I said, if I'm going to do this, I want to be able to play the whole character. She said, no, we'll speak to George about that. They came back and said, yeah, that would be great.
What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
You mentioned the prosthetics. You've got to feel some pain for your art at times. How painful, how long was that process?
It started out at being about 4 to 4.5 hours of application, which was pretty intense.
I imagine it was also good limbo practice for you as well, having that giant head on your actual human head, trying to get under doors and what have you around the set.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that it was incredibly light. After a very short while, you kind of forget that it's on. What reminds you that it's on is that people look at you very strangely. And the other thing that reminds you got it in is hitting doorways. I'm 6'4" as it is. So there's a lot of doorways that I have to duck under. And with that head on, I just kept forgetting. And, more often than not, I'd hear a scream across the studio, Silas, what are you doing? And there'd be this big kind of mark across.
Back to the makeup room for you.
Yeah.
In episodes 2 and 3, Silas as Ki-Adi finally got to wield a lightsaber. As a non-fanboy, I wondered what this meant to him and whether he even knew what one was.
I did know what a lightsaber was. It was cool. There was something hallowed about having a lightsaber on your belt, even in those first stationary scenes. I was nervous about the fighting side of it. But we had an amazing fight director called Nick Gillard, who's very, very cool guy, really good at his job, but very relaxed, very cool. And his initial approach was always about, what do you know? What kind of combat do you know? What are you used to? What's going to make you feel comfortable? And then we will adapt to that, rather than imposing something on people that is, really difficult for them to get their heads around. I said to him, look, I don't have any martial arts skills and don't have any combat skills, but I've done some sword fighting, on stage. And as a tennis player, I am much more comfortable single-handed than double-handed. Lots of people could do double-handed backhands and, forehands. I can't do that. So I said to him, I would love to develop a character who could just fight single-handed. And he was like, let's go for that. Loads of fun wielding.
I bet. So your tennis technique inspired your lightsaber technique in a funny kind of way. That's all I had up my sleeve. Yeah.
It
sounds like decades after most, you finally had a Star Wars fanboy moment with the lightsaber once you learnt what it meant. It sounds like it, did make an impact on you.
Yeah, I have absolutely no shame in saying that it took me decades to get into a genre or into, a cultural moment. By the end of it, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I learned along the way what so many other people seem to know.
Silas's other most famous role was Nute Gunray. However, he was initially only supposed to be the body, until he managed to convince Robin Gurland to let him voice for Neimoidian as well.
I said, look, I want to do the voice for Nute. And she was like, no, absolutely not. We've already got your voice in 2 other characters. You can't. I said, well, I'm actually pretty good at doing silly voices. Listen to this tape. And I was very pushy about it. I gave her a voice tape and said, listen to the different characters I've done on this tape. She did, and they bought it, the fools.
You were hustling,
I was hustling. Yeah, I was hustling, but also they treated me really, really well. And I think that they just liked having me around, and I was up for it. Lots of people can't do that kind of, being inside prosthetics and helmets and stuff. It's too claustrophobic.
Now, Nute Gunray is he's a character. Don't take this personally. A character I kind of love to hate in a way, but I think that's meant to be the response, right?
Oh, totally.
Good.
Yeah, for want of a better word, he's an arsehole.
He is. There's something very fishy about that fish-like creature. Slightly different experience for you, I believe, behind the scenes, which was more kind of prosthetic mask stroke animatronic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a whole head that goes over your head with the prosthetic skin on. Lots of wires and gizmos inside. The blinking eyes and the moving eyebrows and the moving mouth. All of that is plugged into a backpack full of batteries, which is why they had those kinds of hunchback shoulders. Very uncomfortable. And you've just got the tiny little slits to see through. It was very intense.
Well, that's all well and good, Silas, but what can you tell me about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
It's now a GIF, isn't it?
Yeah, a meme, a GIF. It's flies everywhere. Around. In fact, your two characters everywhere. Really have become a meme factory, I would say.
Yeah. That's a strange thing. I didn't expect that when I went on stage in Guys and Dolls at the age of 17.
To be a meme icon.
Yeah. It's odd, isn't it?
But, you said that line, presumably with no context, then Yoda takes all the glory, goes off to save the Wookiees that you were so concerned about. It probably just felt like a throwaway line, and here we are talking about it all these years later, this random line.
Yeah. Ki-Adi in the back going, excuse me, Wookiees, hello. Yoda can take the credit for that.
Typical Yoda. Typical Yoda.
He needs it.
He does. He needs the coverage.
He needs all the help.
He needs the good press, to be fair. Silas, thank you very much for talking to me.
Pleasure, James.
It's been great to do this.